Thank you guys for your patience. We had some issues with connectivity. One of the speakers will be online with us. So we continue with the topic of improving public perception and trust in DeFi. And it will be a panel. After the panel, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. And let's give a round of applause to Julien Bouteloup, who is going to be online, Friederike Ernst, Martin Derka, Daniel. Instead of Daniel, we'll have Will Harborn from Reno, CEO of Reno. Meet them on the stage, please.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Martin. I'm from QuantStamp. I'm the head of new initiatives at QuantStamp, and my role is to moderate this panel. Together with me, I have Friederike, I have Will, and Julien is online. So maybe let's start right away. Can I ask the panelists to introduce themselves, maybe starting with Friederike?
Yeah, hi. I'm Friederike. I am one of the co-founders of Gnosis. I also host a podcast named Epicenter, and I am here for all things DeFi.
Awesome. Will?
Awesome. I'm Will. I'm one of the co-founders of RhinoFi, which is a all-in-one DeFi platform for accessing DeFi across lots of different chains. Makes it easy and safe to do that. Before this, I worked on early decentralized exchange projects and also at centralized exchanges.
Thank you. And Julien?
Hey guys, so my name is Julien Bouteloup. I'm the CEO of Stake Capital. We invest in a space. It's a family office, but we also build a bunch of different products in the DeFi space, such as StakeDAO, Blackpool, Rect, and Use. And I'm also involved in early days in Curve Finance. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. So this panel is supposed to be about trust and public perception of DeFi. So I think that the very clear opening question is, if we were to characterize the current state of trust and public perception for DeFi, how would we do that? What do we think about, where we currently stand? Friederike.
Oh, this is a loaded question.
It is. Every single question will be loaded here.
I think it depends on kind of which public you're talking about, right? So basically, like the wider public, who think cryptocurrency in and of itself is kind of seedy. Obviously, they won't look favorably on this. And I think from within the community, there is a much more nuanced view. And so basically, there is good, reliable, worthwhile DeFi, and then there's like the casino DeFi, and I think it's a spectrum, right?
Okay, interesting. Well,
so I think that's true, and I think as a whole, many people in our space wanted to say, oh look, last year CeFi failed, and DeFi is here to kind of solve those problems. I think personally, until very recently, I really underestimated the trust issues. So, for example, we ran a very big series of user interviews on RhinoFi basically the first half of this year. And the single biggest factor that came out was just how big the distrust is now of DeFi. We saw people who basically would say to us, oh, we came onto your site, and even the fact that you're offering yield, basically we aggregate yield from different DeFi opportunities, things like Aave, some that are a bit higher risk, but even the fact that you offer yield means it's a scam. Like that's the level, and we saw all this continually come through, very minor things which we didn't even think about. People just assume it's a scam now, and so I think the default assumption is that everything in DeFi, in crypto maybe wider, is a scam, and you have to work very hard to kind of overcome that.
Thank you. I will actually get back to this topic of what happened last year and how this failure of CeFi kind of implicated the public trust in DeFi. But Julien, if you are with us, because the screen just went black.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, perfect. So what do you think about the trust and public perception of DeFi at this current moment?
Well, I think unfortunately the trust in DeFi is highly correlated to big influencers in a space that have been building centralized products such as centralized exchanges that have built those infrastructure that use crypto and were able to distribute those products to a large scale of retail in a space. And when they failed, then the public and all the people in the DeFi space or outside DeFi, they believed it was a failure of the technology and the blockchain in general. So unfortunately, I think we as a community tend to put a lot of trust in people running those projects, but don't necessarily use the technology to a certain extent to make us safe. Yes, DeFi never, blockchain never failed so far since the creation of blockchain and for example, Ethereum. And those projects that are built in a decentralized way, such as, I don't know, Aave, Curve, and etc., never failed. So it's really about the people that are building on top of this technology that make the community and the outside community of DeFi believe that it's dangerous to use this technology, which is actually the opposite.
So you mentioned that Aave never failed, right? Fair enough, they never did. But there are many DeFi projects that actually did fail and suffered security incidents in the past. So do you have an opinion on how the failures of these other projects project on DeFi as a whole?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of how long you've been in the space and what is your appetite to risk compared to the speed of the thing that you are building. Because if you look into the space, a lot of people that projects that fail are quite young projects that want to position themselves in a space and capture market shares, which is understandable. But at the same time, they take more risk than security level. So at some point they fail. In Rect News, when we cover, I would say a majority and more than 90% of all the projects that failed are young projects because they feel pressure to position themselves in a space with having a huge amount of TVL or sufficient TVL to justify the product is good, and also volume and being able to be capturing fees. So the problem is always, in order for your product to be adopted, you need to show good numbers. But in order to show good numbers, you need to have a certain appetite to risk. And it's, are you able to buy the risk? Are you able to cover if something happens? Because being fully audited is not actually a good reason for the project not to fail. A project that has a high probability of not failing or being hacked is a project that has been there for a long time and also fully audited. So yeah, it's tough for a new project to not fail, because in order for them to not fail, they need to be adopted, they need to show good traction. In order to show good traction, they need to go fast. So in this community, you need to look at who's been building for a long time, who's been putting security first, rather than actually FOMO and what we call dev in prod, which is very dangerous and has shown a high percentage of wrecked.
Awesome, thank you very much. So I would like to stay on this topic of adoption for a little bit. When it comes to DeFi projects, right? What drives the adoption the most? Is it the technology? Is it the user experience? Or is it just the pure numbers of the APY or APR that people see on the website and say, oh, I have to be making that right now? What do you guys think? Open question to any of you.
Honestly, I think, especially at the moment we are now, I think it's different from a year ago. It is, I think it's all of the things you mentioned, but for the basic reason of building trust. So a good user experience gives the team the confidence that, because I think the thing to understand is most users of DeFi do not have the knowledge of which projects are safe, which are well audited. They are going very much on the indicators that they can find elsewhere. And so if the user experience is good, it's much more likely that the protocol itself is well designed and well thought through. If the user experience is bad or has bugs, you probably are going to anticipate that the protocol itself might have bugs. If there are lots of other users, it's much more likely that it's going to be safe. And so all of these indicators are part of building trust. And I think the key for onboarding now is very much get people to use it with a small amount of funds, get confident with all these different indicators before they come with a larger amount. A year ago, I think it was different in that people were much more happy to take larger risks and sort of gave the benefit of the doubt to new protocols. Now there's sort of no benefit of the doubt, and I think that affects everyone, including the top protocols, because I think many newer users coming in still don't know that maybe Aave's been around for so long. They're still evaluating it in the same way that they'll evaluate anything else.
Okay, Friederike, same question. What drives adoption in DeFi, and which of these aspects are actually important or harmful when it comes to public perception and trust?
Yeah, so I think we have to differentiate between adoption by people who are already in the space and adoption by people who are coming into the space anew. And I think especially for for basically the former, I don't really want to talk about them too much because it's a very limited pool. I mean, if it actually comes down to it, it's a couple of thousand people, right? I mean, it's not that many, and many of them are actually mostly airdrop farmers, to be honest. So people who actually use it as a financial product in and of itself. That's a really, really small group of people. So basically, I think how to drive adoption, I think we mostly have to look at how to make this easier to use and B, more appealing to the mainstream. And yeah, I think there are like several ideas I could kind of share with you, but maybe it's also...
So I actually have a follow-up question in here. So are we, as developers of DeFi, actually doing this right? Because you mentioned the UI and UX and I just recalled when based money came out, right? That's like back in the DeFi spring. I first went on the website and his giant skull jumped out and it started flashing at me. I was like, and I should put my money in this? Seriously? Are you guys serious? So, do we as the community actually behave properly so that we foster trust and public perception? Or are we, this like small circle of people who kind of likes to have fun and we are just having fun because everybody in the circle gets it?
I think, as Friederike was saying, I think there are a few thousand people who wanted and still want maybe to play those games with their money and see if they can mess around and make a lot of money. Ultimately, I think the whole purpose of DeFi should be to create an alternative financial system to the traditional financial system that can be for a much wider, hundreds of millions of people to use and trust that they can put their savings into to escape from inflation. And that's not going to be using those kind of things. So it's almost two different products. We have had the product of these kind of scary random games that people find fun and exhilarating to play, but it's an entirely different DeFi infrastructure that we then are now trying to build, which almost those two sort of are at odds because the former sort of scares people off and like for good reasons and puts people off from using that sort of newer trusted DeFi infrastructure, which maybe like has benefited from the experience of learning from that stuff, but actually is targeted at a very different target audience. And I think one of the big differences will be the assets that are in it. So things like real-world assets, inflation-resistant stablecoins, and other things. But that's very difficult to communicate when we're trying to do both things at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I want to stay with you for a little bit longer. You mentioned, the events in decentralized finance that happened last year, right? Where I presume you were kind of getting at the crash of 3AC and Alameda and FTX and, problems of Celsius. Could you maybe, shed some light on these events and elaborate on how you think this has impacted DeFi right now and how it brought us to, where we currently stand?
I think there's different sides to it. Like on the one hand, I think personally it was just the biggest shakeup of trust in the space that's happened so far. I mean, constantly the space has been plagued by these kind of things, but the fact it had such wide media coverage, the fact there was so much trust into FTX in the traditional media and institutions, just, I think, completely sets us back a lot, like many, many years. I mean, I don't think it's, I think, of course, we've all spoken about this for the last year, but that is something which DeFi also then has to combat, because in the majority of people's eyes, it's all one blockchain system. And there's not much we can do about that apart from just really slowly try to rebuild confidence.
So after all these incidents, one of the opinions that I've heard, in the general public was, well, centralized finance is clearly suffering from some issues. And so that's why we actually have DeFi. But DeFi just has to get back to the first principles, the decentralization, the trustlessness, right? So that nobody can rug pull and similar stuff. So, one of the opinions was that this was actually positive for DeFi, and we would encounter an uptick in the public perception of DeFi. Julien, this is actually a question almost directed at you. Do you think that this opinion applies, or would you say, no, this is nonsense?
I would say that I had this opinion like years ago, but the narrative of today is saying that DeFi is there to completely remove, change, replace the traditional financial system and offer people an alternative. I don't think this is true. And I think, for example, all this story about DAOs and decentralized autonomous organization and different things, we realized ourselves that there was a reason why the Greek, the Roman, and all those people, civilization, spent thousands of years trying to come up with a system that is a good governance, and ourselves believe that we found out that DAOs was the solution to the society problem. But then today, most people, they try to not mention DAOs and try to remove the term of DAOs. And it's the same in the DeFi space. I don't think DeFi is there to replace the financial system. I think, and I would like to see, because 99%, I mean, it's a sarcasm statement, but I would say that 99% of population worldwide, they cannot remember the password of Facebook. So how can you tell people not your key, not your money? And this is completely wrong. 99% of people don't even know how to manage a password. So how can you ask them and force them to manage their own key? I think the financial system, traditional financial system, has features, products, and things in place to guarantee and protect people. For example, you have lawyers, you have notary, you have insurance systems, you have things in place that can guarantee people to be safe. And this is not by 100% having DeFi in your ledger in your pocket or having under your matla that you will make those people safe, because then you have people that will knock on the door of someone and etc. I think solution, the use of course, those safe, secure enclave, account abstractions, all different things that can be plugged in the traditional financial system. So I would like to use my banking, I would like to use Revolut, I would like to use those existing tools, but under the hood, I need to know if those systems are using blockchain technology, because then it makes the system safer, and also it protects people from the outside attacks and inside attacks. So I would say that the narrative was DeFi will disrupt, DeFi will replace, as I heard in the panel right now, but I think this is all wrong. What I want to see is how can traditional finance use the tool of today that is being built in decentralized finance. And this is where you will see large-scale adoptions, and also where those things will be usable, safe, and distributed among a larger scale of people worldwide. That is the only way. So you have UX and UI, but UX and UI, it's good in traditional finance. We have the technology in DeFi, but we don't have the UX and UI. So what about we merge those two? And for the first time, we think about, okay, how those traditional financial products can use the technology that we've built today to provide this technology to a larger scale of people to be safe, and so they don't get rug pull, they can withdraw funds whatever they want. We have the technology in place today that can make this possible.
Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Friederike, Julien mentioned the role of DAOs, or DAOs in general. So he also mentioned Gnosis, right? So you are affiliated with Gnosis DAO. What is your opinion about the role of DAOs in the current world of DeFi? and their perception from the people who do not even know what DAO is?
I think it's really difficult to kind of speak about the DAO as a monolithic thing and everyone knows what it is. So I think DAOs can be basically DAOs just offer new tooling how to coordinate with people you don't necessarily have to know. And I totally agree with Julien that basically the current incarnation of DAOs, what we see today, they suffer from a whole host of problems, right? So basically voter fatigue, you can't. Am I okay?
Back.
I'm back. Fantastic. So voter fatigue. People don't care to vote. So basically, even on important votes, turnout is super low. So basically, that gives you lots of room for kind of governance attacks, where basically people attack the system by using it in the way that it was designed to do, but not in the way that it was intended to. And then you have things like DAO. Basically, so basically, a lot of people take DAO to mean that no one is in charge, and I think this is a fundamental misunderstanding. To me, DAOs just make it more transparent how kind of decisions are made and which people or entities actually make these decisions. DAOs also have an attention problem. So basically, if you look at the amount of votes that some DAOs go through, basically it's like a 20-hour per week job to kind of keep up with it. And obviously that's a nightmare for kind of people who want to participate in it, but for whom it's not their primary job to do that. So basically, I think we have to come up with better ways of kind of managing this attention problem. And super interestingly, back in the day, there was a project called DAOstack, and they had it right at that point. So basically they kind of said, okay, what's really the scarce resource here is attention, and we need to price that in, and basically people need to pay and make a deposit if they kind of want to bring a vote, and then basically if it's boring and it falls through, basically people are paid. Basically it's kind of like just putting an incentive layer on top of it. Obviously, the space in which you can do it, the possibility space is huge, and I think we need to experiment with this. I think kind of bringing back some of the more complicated models that we've seen in the past that kind of didn't make it, as compared to the fairly simple compound style DAOs. I think kind of bringing them back and having some of these elements introduced into the DAOs that we use today, I think that'll be awesome. But I think what DAOs actually intend to change is that to actually even partake in the discussion, for most organizations today, that is severely gate-kept. And I think making that open and accessible to a wider audience also increases your talent pool. And basically, you need good mechanisms, and the mechanisms today are not satisfactory. But I wouldn't kind of throw the entire idea of a DAO out. It's kind of like that would be my very long answer.
No, yeah. If I can add,
Absolutely.
I do think that you cannot add DAOs without a core group of people building and drafting the visions of the product that they are trying to build. So my point is, what we've seen, I haven't seen, maybe Bitcoin, and that's it, that's the only exceptions, but I haven't seen any project in the space that I've built from start as a DAO and I've been successful. Because at some point, the interest, and that was a good point, as you said, Friederike, is that at some point, the interest of all the people that potentially have ownership of those tokens in the DAO will be against the long-term, mid-term. So for example, like in Curve Wars, you have been people accumulating governance power in the project, but did not necessarily incentivize for the long-term future success of the project. So DAOs, it's a major problem, except if you have a core team that know how to drive the vision of the project. So it's a very good thing if it's used as a product, a feature, and not as an entity that trying to behave as a core core principle of the product of the company.
Thank you, Julien. Opportunity to respond. Otherwise, I will switch gears a little bit here.
No, I'm super happy with what
Okay.
Julien said. I think this is true. You always need a dedicated group of people who kind of drive things. For me, it's just important that it's permeable, kind of who this group is, and that people
Right.
can come in and go out, and that it's not set in stone. And basically, that the barrier to entry is just a lot lower than it is today.
Awesome. I will move over to Will, and I said that I would like to switch gears. So the switching gears, I would be interested in your personal experiences with DeFi. Do you guys yourself have a project that you've trusted and were absolutely wrong? And if not, do you have another project that you admire for some reason?
I think I won't say something where I was completely wrong, but I will give quite a recent experience, which was with multichain.org, which is a bridge experience. And so I was using it, I don't know, I think a couple of months ago for the first time, at least through the UI, and had to go through quite a difficult experience in terms of trusting it. I hadn't realized it was the same as AnySwap, which was rebranded from, ended up having to, thinking that it looked too good to be true because the fees were so cheap for a bridge. So of course, naturally start Googling, what is this, how does it work? Eventually used it, and then, which took quite a long time of probably about half an hour of trying to build trust, and then found that it worked and used it with a larger amount of funds. Now a couple of weeks later, after going through all the effort to trust it, there was news articles about maybe their sort of founders had been arrested in China, or it stopped working for lots of routes. So I think that's an example where, even as someone who's worked in this space for 6-7 years, it's very difficult to trust quite a well-known project. And then once you do, actually you find out there's potentially other issues. There must have been some centralized elements that have now stopped working because someone's been potentially arrested. I think that just illustrates that even for us in this space, it's very difficult to trust things now.
Okay. If you were to very quickly, because we are sort of short on time in here, to give one advice to any of the sort of projects that you've sort of referenced, what would that be? What could they do better?
Well, for me, I think it's that we should stop trying to make DeFi, DAOs, everything we're doing fun, because it being fun, it doesn't correlate with it being safe and being able to onboard millions of people into it. We should focus on, unfortunately, trying to make these systems more boring. And actually, I think some of the stuff Friederike spoke about with DAOstack, for example, I think it's the same in DAOs. The projects that were trying to do it well, which might have been able to be used by many people, were too boring. So we just ignored all of that stuff and went back to the old models for the last sort of bull run because it was more fun for the small number of people who are playing in the space now. So I think the advice is be more boring.
Beautiful. Julien, same question. Were you at some point terribly wrong about a project as an investor, as a private user, as anybody?
Yeah, multiple times. But I would say, for example, 3 years ago, when I first started Rect News, I was one of the biggest opponents of criticizing, like guys that were criticizing FTX, Sam, and I made a video with Rect News, and I asked Sam, this is not possible that you can beat me on some arbitrage in some market that have been here for a long time. Where is coming this fund? And I made a joke that this fund must come from retail. The video is online, you can check. But still there, I said, okay, it doesn't matter, we'll still use FTX. And so the point is, at some point, influencers and influencing in the space is so strong that even yourself you can avoid some conclusions and pass red flags. In multi-chain and then Uniswap and AnySwap, those things since the guy that was involved in this project is quite well known in the industry for almost 100% rug pulls and all these projects failing, for me it was really clear that at some point the project will come to conclusions of either having some big issues. So I would say major project in the space, you should always listen to your guts, and if there is something that is fishy, we need the community to investigate. We need the community to loudly talk about it and not believe this is just okay and we let it pass. So yes, the product that I felt this is one of the big example. I cover it, I called it, but still I continue using it. So it's difficult. So, yeah, it's kind of stupid. But because it was the major player in the space, so you always ask yourself, is it possible, too big to fail? But today you still have a major player in the space, and I've been trying to call it out. And every time you mention it, you have people attacking you for calling out behaviors and things that are happening that are on chain. So it's there. People just need to open their eyes, but they start to ignore it because it's too strong, too powerful. So it's not possible that this happened. So we have to be careful, yes. And then the second question was about project that I believe
Julien,
where
I apologize. I'm getting a signal from the organizers that we are running out of time.
Cool.
So second question without an answer. Same to you, Friederike. My apology. We are out of time, so I will not give you space to answer. I would like to thank all the panelists for the time. Thank you very much. Thank you for your insightful opinions. Thank you, audience.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.